For over 2 centuries, humanity had tread carefully within the Galactic Union. When Earth first made contact with alien civilizations, it was as though an entire universe had opened up before them. A universe filled with wonder, but also rife with complexities, rules, and long-standing rivalries. To survive, humans quickly learned the art of diplomacy, negotiation, and most importantly, restraint. They adapted to being the newcomers, enduring the dismissive glances and occasional insults from the more powerful, older species within the Union. Many of these species saw humans as young, naive, and in need of guidance, or, in some cases, as a lesser race, unworthy of respect. Despite the slights and indignities, humanity persevered. Humans established trade agreements, adhered to every law, and took every opportunity to contribute to the Union, aiming to prove themselves as peaceful and cooperative allies. But under the surface, resentment grew. Every unfair ruling by the Union Council, every human colony left defenseless because resources were better allocated elsewhere, and every friend lost to Union-sanctioned conflicts in which humanity was expected to sacrifice lives for alliances that barely acknowledged them. All of it weighed on the human spirit. But humans held their peace, understanding that pushing back could isolate them or bring on repercussions that a young species could not afford. Leaders across Earth preached patience, diplomacy, and cooperation. Prove ourselves through our character, they would say. So humanity endured, quietly absorbing every indignity, bending but never breaking. Until one day, the straw that would finally snap their resolve came in the form of an unprovoked tragedy. It happened during a routine mission in the Orion sector. A small human vessel, the Equinox, was en route to deliver supplies to an outpost on the edge of Velkayar space, near the border between Union territories. The Velkayar Dominion was notorious for its arrogance, a powerful species known for its control over advanced weaponry and its ruthlessness in asserting dominance. Though technically within Union jurisdiction, the Velkayar often acted as if the rules did not apply to them. They had a reputation for aggressive territorial enforcement, but no one expected what would come next. Without warning, the Equinox was intercepted by a Velkayar warship. Communications were jammed, leaving the human crew isolated, their distress calls unanswered. The Velkayar captain accused them of smuggling illegal resources, an accusation entirely unfounded and impossible, as the Equinox was a Union-registered vessel carrying only standard supplies. The crew, desperate and afraid, pleaded for mercy, explaining their mission and requesting that the Union be notified to clear up the misunderstanding. But the Velkayar were not interested in explanations. They stormed the ship, took the crew as prisoners, and paraded them back to Velkayar Prime. The Union Council received reports from human diplomats pleading for intervention. However, the Union Council dismissed the incident, deeming it a local matter and advising humanity to respect Velkayar authority. Days turned into weeks, and the captured crew of the Equinox remained detained under brutal conditions. Human families back on Earth held vigils, anxiously awaiting news. Human representatives petitioned for their release, but the Union's response was always the same. Stay calm, show respect, let the issue resolve itself diplomatically. Behind closed doors, Union leaders insisted that appeasing the Velkayar was essential for maintaining stability. They assured humanity that certain sacrifices were necessary for the greater peace. Then the unthinkable happened. News arrived on Earth that the Velkayar had executed the crew of the Equinox, citing crimes against the Dominion and claiming that they were spies posing as traitors. The Velkayar broadcasted the executions across their networks, showing the humans' final moments as a message to anyone who dared challenge their authority. They flaunted their victory as if they had conquered a worthy foe rather than innocent civilians. The Union Council released a brief, dismissive statement, calling the event unfortunate, but affirming that Velkayar's sovereignty had to be respected. Human ambassadors begged the Council to reconsider, to take action, to at least censure the Velkayar. But the Council refused. Earth's representatives, stunned and furious, were told once more to show restraint. The message was clear. The Union had no intention of defending humans. Back on Earth, The incident sparked a wildfire of outrage. News of the unjust executions spread like a virus, igniting protests in every major city. The outrage was shared across the human colonies and space stations. Humanity's patience had finally worn thin. The grief of the families, the cries for justice, the anger over years of being treated as lesser, all of it erupted, no longer able to be contained. Leaders and representatives across human settlements gathered in an emergency council on Earth. Every discussion about peace and cooperation, every reassurance that humans had a place in the Union, felt hollow now. Those present relived each injustice, recalling human colonies that had been forced to fend for themselves during crises, trade routes that had been unfairly taxed, and countless lives sacrificed in Union skirmishes where humanity was treated as expendable. It was a somber council, but with each retelling, something dark and resolute grew. Finally, after hours of discussion, Earth's leaders reached a decision. They would no longer bow, no longer appease, and no longer tolerate a union that treated them as pawns. Humanity would protect its own, with or without the union's support. The assembled leaders and diplomats voted unanimously. It was time to take a stand, to show the galaxy that humanity would not be treated as lesser any longer. For the first time, the United Earth Federation sanctioned a formal withdrawal from all non-essential Union activities. Human diplomats, once the image of diplomacy and humility, walked out of the Union Council chambers. Human colonies ceased trade with Union worlds, and Earth withdrew from several key trade agreements, signaling a dramatic shift. The galaxy watched in shock, struggling to understand the implications of humanity's sudden defiance. Back on Earth, a sense of purpose took hold, and humanity's industries mobilized. Unknown to the galaxy, humanity had been quietly advancing its technologies in secret over the years. While the Union focused on keeping them under control, humanity had developed defensive and offensive capabilities far more advanced than the Union suspected. All those years of silent suffering had given humans the time and motivation to prepare. Now, those preparations would be put to use. Within weeks, human forces began to reposition in space, consolidating their defenses and organizing fleets that had, until now, remained hidden. The fleet, named the Shield of Earth, was equipped with stealth technologies, advanced weaponry, and high-speed engines. From outposts to distant colonies, humans mobilized and alliances formed within their own ranks. The message sent across human colonies was clear and resonated deeply. We stand together. We fight for our own. No longer bound by the Union's restrictive protocols, human commanders prepared to defend their own as they saw fit. Every member of humanity, soldier, scientist, diplomat, and citizen, felt the shift. The anger that had once simmered under the surface became a quiet, focused determination. In the darkness of space, the Shield of Earth readied itself. The Velkaiar Dominion would be the first to witness what happened when humanity was pushed too far. The rest of the galaxy looked on, uncertain of what humanity intended, but sensing the storm on the horizon. At the heart of it all was a silent but shared understanding. Humanity had snapped. Every injustice, every slight, every sacrifice had been absorbed, and now they had transformed it into a weapon. The galaxy would soon learn what it meant to stand against a united, unyielding humanity. The transformation of humanity's stance sent shockwaves through the Galactic Union. Species across the galaxy watched with a mix of confusion, fear, and intrigue as humanity withdrew from alliances, severed long-standing trade agreements, and turned inward, preparing for what felt like the calm before a storm. Diplomatic channels that had once buzzed with human attempts at peaceful negotiation went silent. The Union Council, composed of elder species that had dominated the political landscape for millennia, was suddenly faced with a rising, unpredictable force in the form of humanity. At first, many in the Union scoffed, dismissing humanity's actions as the reckless tantrum of a young race that didn't understand the cost of defiance. After all, humans were a relatively new member of the interstellar community, barely scratching the surface of true technological advancement, or so they thought. The Union Council was confident that humanity's anger would burn out quickly and that they would inevitably come crawling back, begging for reconciliation. But for the first time, humanity was done bending. In the silence that followed humanity's withdrawal, Union forces began to notice strange occurrences along their borders with human territory. Ships that crossed into human-controlled sectors reported brief, eerie encounters with unmarked vessels that would appear on their sensors only for a moment before vanishing. Fleets equipped with what they thought were the latest in Union scanning technology couldn't detect these ships until it was too late. Alarms sounded as captains struggled to make sense of what they were seeing. Human ships, black as the void, equipped with stealth technology that rendered them almost invisible to traditional detection methods. One by one, Union patrols sent to monitor human sectors stopped responding. Communication lines went dark, and Union officials scrambled for answers. But humanity remained silent, refusing every attempt at dialogue. The galaxy began to feel humanity's fury in the form of silent, calculated strikes that targeted Velkir outposts and military installations. The first full-scale assault was swift and brutal. The Velkir Dominion, still reveling in their perceived victory over humanity, dismissed reports of strange disturbances along their borders, thinking it was merely human posturing. But then, out of nowhere, a fleet of human warships appeared on the edge of Velkir space. Unlike the trade ships and diplomatic vessels the Velkir were used to, these human warships were sleek and deadly, each bristling with weapons powered by tech the Velkir had never seen. The humans had developed high-energy plasma cannons capable of tearing through Velkir armor as though it were made of paper. The Velkir responded with force, dispatching their own fleet to meet the intruders. Their confidence was unshakable. They were a warrior race, feared across the galaxy for their might. They expected an easy victory, a reminder to humanity of their place in the pecking order. But the moment the two fleets clashed, it became painfully clear that this battle would not go as planned. Human warships moved with uncanny precision, coordinating with a level of discipline that stunned their Velkir opponents. The human fleet employed advanced tactical AI systems that allowed them to adapt in real time, countering Velkir formations before they could complete their maneuvers. It was as if humanity had anticipated every move, every tactic the Velkir might try. And when the Velkir attempted to broadcast for backup, their distress signals were blocked, intercepted by human tech that jammed their communications across the system. Human Marines boarded Velkir vessels, storming through corridors with a speed and ruthlessness that left seasoned Velkir soldiers scrambling for cover. The Marines were equipped with suits that enhanced their physical abilities, making them stronger, faster, and far more resilient than any Velkir had anticipated. In a terrifying display of precision and control, the humans moved through the ships, taking them down one by one, leaving no survivors and sending a message that this was not mere retaliation. It was retribution. The Velkir Dominion, realizing the true scale of the threat, scrambled to call on their allies within the Union Council. But many of those allies, watching the human onslaught with growing dread, hesitated to get involved. Other species, even those who had previously dismissed humanity, were now forced to reconsider their stance. This was not a rebellion. It was a coordinated, calculated response to centuries of abuse. The humans had shown that they were willing to defend themselves in ways no one had foreseen, and any species that interfered risked drawing the ire of humanity as well. As the Velkir fleet was obliterated and outposts fell, word spread throughout the galaxy. Civilians and military leaders alike whispered tales of the human fleet. Ships that could cloak themselves, weapons that could annihilate enemy armor with a single hit, and soldiers who moved with deadly, unyielding purpose. Some Union members began to wonder just how advanced humanity's technology truly was. If they had hidden fleets and weaponry like this, what else were they hiding? The Union Council, now fully realizing the severity of the situation, scrambled to reach out to Earth, hoping to negotiate. Ambassadors were sent, but every attempt at communication was met with silence. The humans were focused, their purpose unwavering. They moved through Velkir space with precision, taking out military installations, supply routes, and every remnant of Velkir control. The Dominion was in shambles, its leaders scrambling to evacuate from what they once thought was an impenetrable fortress world. Union leaders called an emergency council, attempting to unify their resources to defend against what they now recognized as a grave threat. In a final act of desperation, the Union mobilized a massive fleet, gathering ships from dozens of species to show force. Their goal was to establish a blockade at the edge of Velkir space, hoping to halt the human advance and force negotiations. But humanity had planned for this. As the Union fleet held its position, waiting to intercept the human armada, their sensors picked up what they initially thought was debris. Ships appeared as faint blips on their scanners, small, unassuming vessels drifting toward them. The Union captains watched curiously, unaware of the trap until it was too late. Those small blips were actually human stealth drones, each equipped with powerful explosives and designed to target and disable ship engines and weapon systems. In a matter of minutes, the Union blockade was thrown into chaos as drones breached ship hulls, disabling entire sections of the fleet. Panic spread, and as the Union ships struggled to regain control, the human armada emerged from the darkness. Like phantoms, the human warships glided into position, surrounding the Union forces and cutting off any chance of retreat. The Union fleet was left paralyzed, trapped by the invisible noose humanity had laid around them. Human commanders transmitted a single message across the Union's communication channels. We asked for respect. You responded with silence. This is your consequence. The message resonated through every corner of the Union. Species that had once sneered at humanity's weakness now realized the true extent of their mistake. Earth had once pleaded for a place in the Union, had once fought to be part of their community. But now, the roles were reversed, and humanity was dictating terms. With the Union fleet at their mercy, humanity issued their demands. The Velkir Dominion was to be disbanded, its leaders handed over to humanity for trial. Any species that had profited from human exploitation or mistreatment would be required to provide reparations. And above all, humanity would have its place in the Union Council, not as mere members, but as equals. As the Union leaders listened to humanity's demands, a heavy silence settled over the council chamber. They understood that they had no choice. Humanity's display of strength was a message they could not ignore, a message that humanity's patience had limits and that those limits had been reached. One by one, the Union leaders signaled their acceptance of humanity's terms. They could see no alternative. The galaxy had underestimated the humans, had misjudged their capacity for both patience and wrath. And now, every species in the galaxy would remember the cost of that mistake. As humanity pulled back its forces, a sense of quiet victory settled over Earth. They had finally proven that they were not to be dismissed, that their voices would not be silenced. And for the first time in history, humanity stood tall as a true power among the stars, commanding the respect they had long been denied. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity unleashed its fury. In the days that followed humanity's victory over the Velkir Dominion and the forced concession from the Union Council, a silence settled over the galaxy. Where there had once been endless chatter, bartering, and diplomacy between the countless species, now there was a pervasive and uneasy quiet. Every species, from the smallest trade alliance to the most powerful factions, understood one thing. Humanity was not only a part of the galaxy now, but a force to be reckoned with. They were no longer the young, eager to please members of the Galactic Union. Now, they were something else entirely, a superpower with the will and the means to defend their own, regardless of the cost. The Union, once a body that had dictated terms to humanity, was shaken to its core. Leaders from dozens of worlds met behind closed doors, deliberating on how to handle this new reality. The Union's council chambers, which had always resonated with the authoritative voices of elder species, were now places of whispered conversations and fearful glances. The age-old order had been upended. The once invisible hierarchy of power now had a new contender near the top, and that contender had made its entry in blood and fire. As the galaxy watched, Earth's leaders stepped forward, not as conquerors, but as resolute diplomats. They held a summit, not in Union space, but in human territory. It was a bold move, and every major Union member was invited. Even the few Velkayar survivors were present, their expressions hardened and wary as they observed the beings who had so thoroughly dismantled their once untouchable dominion. The summit was held on a newly constructed space station orbiting Mars, a testament to humanity's engineering prowess. The station was named the Concorde, a word that represented both unity and strength. It was no coincidence. Humanity had come to offer peace, but on their terms and in their house. Ambassadors from across the galaxy arrived on the Concorde, feeling the weight of their position, knowing that they were no longer in a position to dictate. They were there to listen. The summit hall was immense, with a glass ceiling that showed the endless stars of the cosmos. At the head of the room stood Earth's representatives, including Ambassador Maya El-Amin, whose stern resolve had become symbolic of humanity's newfound assertiveness. She was flanked by military officials, scientists, and diplomats, all of whom stood in silence as the Union delegates took their seats. There was no preamble, no ceremony, only the cold realization that humanity had come to set the terms of this new relationship. Maya El-Amin's voice cut through the silence. "We have endured long enough," she began, her words measured and unwavering. For centuries, humanity adhered to the laws and customs of the Union, even when they were unjust, even when they meant the suffering of our own people. We respected your authority, believing that peace was worth any price. But you showed us that respect was a one-way street. She paused, letting her words sink in. The alien delegates shifted uncomfortably, glancing at one another. The council members, who had once issued proclamations and dismissed humanity's grievances, now sat silently, aware that their power had been irrevocably diminished. Maya continued, her tone unyielding. The actions of the Velkayar Dominion and the Union's failure to respond showed us the limits of your so-called unity. When you executed the crew of the Equinox, you did not just kill humans. You broke the bond of trust between us and every species represented here. You failed us, so we took action. And now, we are here to redefine our place in this galaxy. The Velkayar ambassador, a figure wrapped in the dignified robes of his people but visibly shaken, opened his mouth to speak. But Maya raised a hand, and he fell silent. She wasn't interested in apologies or justifications. Humanity had moved beyond the need for platitudes. This was not a summit for reconciliation. It was a new foundation for the future, one in which humanity would be neither subjugated nor ignored. Maya took a breath and set forth humanity's demands. First, we will no longer operate as mere members of the Union. From this day forward, humanity demands equal representation on the Council, with veto power in matters that affect our territories. We will not be left out of decisions that shape our destiny. Some murmuring spread among the delegates, but none dared to object outright. They knew humanity had every means to enforce these demands if necessary. Second, Maya continued, her gaze fixed on the Velkar ambassador. The Velkar Dominion will be disbanded, its territories redistributed among those it has oppressed over the centuries. Reparations will be paid to the families of the Equinox crew, as well as to every human colony and outpost that has suffered under unjust Union decisions. The Velkayar ambassador's eyes narrowed, but he nodded, his shoulders heavy with the weight of defeat. For the first time, his people had been forced to answer for their actions, and there was no escaping the consequences. Finally, Maya said, her voice resonating through the chamber, we demand that any species found guilty of aggression toward humanity or any other member species be subject to immediate disciplinary action. We will not stand by while the Union allows unchecked violence and injustice. Her words left no room for negotiation. This was a vision of a new Union, one where humanity's values of justice, equity, and mutual respect would not just be ideals but the law. The Union delegates could see it clearly. Earth was not seeking conquest or revenge. Humanity wanted to ensure that what happened to the Equinox would never happen again, not to humans and not to any other species. One by one, the Union delegates conceded to humanity's terms. It was either accept this new order or risk a confrontation that no one wanted, one that humanity had already shown it was more than willing to face. And so, reluctantly but inevitably, the Union Council agreed. Over the following weeks, the galaxy adjusted to the new reality. Humanity's rise to power sent ripples through the political and social landscapes of countless worlds. Species who had once looked down on humans now reevaluated their perceptions. Diplomatic overtures flooded into human space as nations sought to align themselves with Earth, eager to show that they respected this new order. Even former enemies reached out, knowing that humanity was no longer a race to cross. And while some species harbored resentment, most understood that humanity's ascension meant stability. They had proven they would not tolerate injustice, not for themselves and not for others. For the first time, the galaxy felt a semblance of order that wasn't based on fear or dominance, but on mutual respect, an order enforced by humanity's iron resolve and readiness to act. Earth became a beacon of justice and strength. Human-led fleets patrolled Union borders, ensuring peace was maintained. Union laws were revised, reflecting humanity's values, and the once paternalistic policies of the Union were restructured to treat all species as equals. The Shield of Earth, humanity's flagship fleet, was now a symbol of both peace and warning, a reminder that Earth's protection extended beyond their own race. They became protectors, enforcers of a new peace, and the galaxy thrived under this equilibrium. But Earth's leaders never forgot what had driven them to this point. In a quiet corner of Earth, a monument was erected in memory of the Equinox and its crew, a reminder of the cost of complacency, of the strength forged in the crucible of injustice. It stood as a symbol, not of war, but of the day humanity found its voice and taught the galaxy that their silence would no longer be taken for granted. In the following years, every species would come to know the story of humanity's uprising, of how a young race, dismissed and belittled, had turned the tables. The legend of that day became a tale told across the stars, a tale of resilience, wrath, and redemption. And as the years passed, one thing was certain. No species, not the Velkir, not the Union Council, not the smallest or the most powerful races, would ever forget the day that humanity finally snapped.